a testimony of grace, redemption, and God's faithfulness. Throughout my academic life, I struggled immensely. Year after year, I barely managed to pass, often relying on grace marks to move forward. However, everything changed in year 9 when, for the first time, no grace marks were awarded. I failed. Fear gripped me, not because of the failure itself, but because I felt I had let my father down, wasting both his hard-earned money and an entire academic year. When I broke the news to him, he didn't shout or raise a hand. His silence and heartbreak pierced me more deeply than any scolding ever could. My mother, ever my encourager, suggested I repeat the year, but I couldn't bear the thought of sitting with juniors. Instead, I chose to take my Year 10 exams privately without attending a traditional school. I was enrolled in a coaching center, but even there I couldn't grasp mathematics and eventually dropped out. I was convinced that studying wasn't for me and that I would never pass. To escape the boredom of being at home, I took up a job as an office boy. Even in the workplace, my colleagues urged me to study during free time, especially with the board exams approaching. Yet, I paid little attention. It wasn't until a week before the exams that I finally picked up my books. For mathematics, I only studied the night before, with help from my elder sister, though I understood very little. I sat my exams with anxiety, certain that I would fail. Amongst my peers, it was widely believed that private candidates rarely passed Year 10, and I was convinced I would be no exception. But then, the results were declared. To my utter shock and amazement, I had passed. That moment was nothing short of a miracle. It was not by my strength nor my wisdom, but by the unceasing prayers of my mother and the mercy of God. As it is written, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective, James 5:16 NIV. I believe her prayers reached heaven, and God, in His grace, answered. From that point onwards, I pursued my studies with renewed faith and purpose. By God's grace, I completed my graduation without ever failing another exam. The Lord truly fulfilled His promise. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. James 1:5 NIV. Looking back, I see clearly that it was the Lord who lifted me up when I was at my lowest. But He said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." 2 Corinthians 12:9 NIV. Indeed, His strength was made perfect in my weakness. All glory, honor, and praise be to God alone, who turned my failure into testimony and gave me a future filled with hope. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11.